Hello and welcome to some r/ProRevenge, with the title of today's story being Sister Wants to Walk Down the Aisle at My Wedding, and we use that to our advantage. Now stay tuned because this is one hell of a story. This is some incredible revenge from Sister in My Wedding. Let's get into it. Here I am, writing this long tale in my honeymoon, but it does feel cathartic to finally type it out, and my husband is more excited about this than the resort drinks. Lol. Anyway, this is a throwaway because I don't have a Reddit account, and my husband, the Reddit fanatic, said he doesn't want this associated with his main. As to why the Reddit guy isn't the one writing this is because he said, since it's my family, I should be the one with the honour of posting her story. But he is looking over my shoulder to help out. So, I think first it's necessary to give some background, to explain how this behaviour reached this level and why our responses were as they were. It's a long read, I apologise. So, ever since I could remember, my parents loved my sister more. I don't mean in subtle ways either. If my sister accused me of something, they'd believe it and punish me. If I accused her, they wouldn't believe me. Even if there was undeniable proof, they would still give her a lesser punishment and try and find a way to scold me in tandem. My birthday cake had to be the flavour she wanted, hers did not. And my parents always denied knowing that I didn't like that type of cake. They always bought her a bit more than for me, and we went to where she wanted, even if it was an event that should be all about me. My sister grew up spoiled and didn't like me, just used me as a punching bag. But at first, she mostly ignored me, but then it got really bad when we became young teens. I'm not sure what the cause and effect are, but she found herself with no friends and her behaviour got worse. Did her friends move? Did they catch her because she was mean? I don't know. But because we were never close and my parents loved to boast about her achievements, but never ever mentioned any issues. Whereas with me, they loved to bring out any flaws of mine constantly as teasing material. I only knew she had none because we went to the same school and I noticed her no longer walking around with people. Anyway, she had no friends, I did. I used to be decently popular. My sister realised that and suddenly I stopped being the occasional punching bag to a hated person she needed to take down all the time. She started accusing me of more stuff. She accused my friends of more stuff. My parents stopped allowing me to hang out with anyone, and the excuses ranging from, they're not good people according to your sister, to, why are you trying to leave us? Why can't you be like your sister and enjoy family time? What saved me from complete isolation was extended family. Most of my family lived in the same hometown, and I got along with my cousins despite some age differences. At one gathering, they invited me over to something, I don't remember what, and I sadly replied, I'm not allowed to go anywhere. When asked why, my kid self with no filter replied that it was because I wasn't allowed to have friends since my sister didn't have any. Well, that reached the adults, who apparently tore my parents apart, hooray! Later I was scolded for lying and grounded as if I had anywhere to go, for a month. But after that, they allowed me some leeway, so it was worth it. And my sister changed schools. I guess the humiliation of extended family knowing her social status was bad, and she demanded to be changed. And my parents immediately obliged, even though it cost them more since the school was further away. But she made friends at the new school. However, she never went back to the previous status quo of mostly ignoring me. I guess having felt the power of how badly she could mess with me, and anger that I told family she had no friends, she never let me go. My life was still bad. Her friends would come over and bully me, and my parents called it light teasing. I never called friends over because my parents were awful hosts to them. Or my sister would accuse them of taking stuff and they'd, of course, believe it. I did become close to my cousins though, since my parents never dared do any of that to the family. And then I got my first boyfriend. I didn't want to bring him home at all, but my parents insisted. Well, at one point we were separated and he came to find me to tell me my sister was flirting with him. By which he meant she came over with skimpy clothing, batted her eyelashes really badly, and started telling him how bad I was and how good she was. He was irked and ran off to find me. Of course, my sister told my parents a different tale, that my boyfriend had instead tried to flirt with her, but she naturally refused, since how could she do that to me? Guess who my parents believed. Now, my boyfriend wasn't perfect, but immediately I believed him. For a mean reason. But I remember that back when I was a teen and suffering from the unfair bad treatment, I was very resentful and moody, and now hated my sister as much as she hated me. with that disclaimer out the way, let's talk about looks. I haven't mentioned them yet because they weren't relevant. My parents were/are overweight, and since they liked showing love via food, giving you more food, buying you treats, etc., my sister was and is also overweight, whereas I was/am not fat. In fact, I've always been kind of skinny because punishment often included no treats or snacks. Obviously, weight isn't what matters, personality is, but my sister, even though she was already rude and spoiled, even her flirting attempts were bad because she never learnt to work for anything since she could just demand my parents would deliver. Added to the fact that she didn't look like some sexy model, even my self-conscious teen self didn't believe my boyfriend would try and cheat on me with her. Anyway, my parents prohibited me from dating such a horrible boy. I did try to keep it going in secret, but it was hard and their relationship ended. I did get another, but again, my sister accused him of flirting with her when he refused her advances. Again, my parents believed her. I tried pointing out how this is happening again, but they decided that meant I was incapable of making good choices and kept picking bad boyfriends. The relationship couldn't handle the Romeo-Juliet situation and fizzled out again. I would eventually get called a woman of ill repute in high school, as I was fine with making out with boys and such, but refused to have relationships, and thankfully it never got back to my sister or my parents though. My sister did bring one boyfriend home during all this time. He was paraded with pride, and my parents spent every second telling me how good he was and why couldn't I be like my sister and find myself someone like that, until he stopped showing up. And suddenly he was a conniving so-and-so that tricked my sister. Oh well. And the unequal treatment continued at this time. She had more spending money, her curfews were better than mine, she was free to go anywhere, at any time, while I couldn't. If I pointed it out, my parents would just say it's because she's older, but when I reached that age, of course, I still didn't have the same treatment she had. And when pointed out, they would deny they ever said that, or claim it was because I couldn't be trusted like she was, using my sister's accusations against my boyfriend and friends as proof of my bad judgment. Time goes by, and it's time for my sister to graduate. She was accepted into college, not a very well regarded one, and she had no scholarship or anything. Again, because her only achievements were told to me, I don't know which college she even tried for. I don't know which colleges she even tried for, so I can't say how badly she was rejected. I do know her grades were bad in school though, because she got a B and we would celebrate. I would usually get good grades my parents refused to celebrate, claiming since I always got those, what was there to celebrate? My parents, naturally, made a lot of fanfare and told her they'd pay for everything. I was relieved she'd be going away. Not that it made my life any easier. She'd always come home every other weekend and somehow stuff kept going missing from her room or some other issues that she could think of to make my life miserable, and my curfews were still strict. Eventually, my mum came to talk to me about my impending graduation. I'm only a year younger than my sister. She told me since they were paying for my sister's college, they had no money to pay for mine. So it would be better for me to start working immediately after graduation and waiting until my sister finished uni to see if they could afford something for me. Oh, and if I decided to stay at home, I'd have to pay for all my stuff, part of the bills and the rent. I pointed out I could get a student loan. Mum said yes, except no. That is, because they were so caring towards me and I had such bad judgment, they would decide if a college was worth me getting into debt or not. I'm not sure how they'd stop me from getting loans, but I didn't ask. Scholarships weren't mentioned. They had no idea what my grades even were anymore, and never believed in my capabilities. Anyway, I didn't bat an eyelid. I simply said okay. My mum clearly didn't expect that and kept pushing. Maybe she hoped I'd throw a tantrum so they'd have excuses to not ever pay for my college, but I said nothing, except I understood their position, thanked them for caring, and that was that. My dad later tried the same, but I also refused to be emotional. You see, after a whole lifetime of their terrible parenting, I never had any expectations towards my education. I knew they would find an excuse to not pay for mine and make my life miserable. I never believed they would eventually pay it if I worked and waited for my sister to graduate. I had been preparing for college for a long time. I could barely go out, my friendships were slim, so I had a lot of time to study, and study I did, because I saw college as my only chance to be free. Well, the time came and I worked my butt off and got a scholarship. Not to anywhere like Ivy League or anything, like law or medical school, but it was a good enough course in a decent college with a full scholarship. Knowing my sister would hate it and try and stop me via my parents, I put my achievement in social media at the same time and told everyone. Even forced myself to thank them in the post. Now they couldn't forbid me from going, as they'd have to explain to the family why. Initially, they were even a little proud and boasting about it. And then, I guess, my sister got to them, and they changed gears and even asked me if I was sure I wanted to go. They let slip my sister wasn't doing well in college, and since she was smarter and had better judgment than me, I'd suffer worse. I obviously stuck to my guns. They weren't happy, but they couldn't do anything. College was my saviour. I started being happy. I still contacted my parents and visited on holidays and such, but since they refused to pay for anything, I could excuse not going due to a lot of money. Due to this time, I avoided introducing any man to them, and my sister stopped going to college. I knew she didn't graduate because, again, they'd have made a fanfare about it. Moved back home, paying no bills or rent, but it's different, my parents said, and started working at the same company as my mum, obviously thanks to my mum pulling the strings. This was all sold to me as a source of pride. Oh well. Almost there, I promise. I met my husband around this time. You know those people that say, if I was in that situation, I'd have done something. My husband is the type that actually does. I'm the person that is meek and a doormat in any situation and can't sleep at night wishing I'd done something, had thought of something witty to say, etc. I'm the person that can't help but cry when I'm angry. My husband is the guy that claps back immediately. He loves drama in that he loves to resolve it. He's the guy that if he doesn't immediately reply to a slight, you better start worrying because he won't forgive and forget. He's just stewing something worse for revenge. He's the one that wanted me to post here and wanted to post on a nuclear revenge board too, but I decided what we did, it wasn't quite nuclear. People were baffled I got together with him, but just because I was incapable, thanks to my upbringing probably, of acting like him, didn't mean I didn't like it. I love that my husband does what I can't, and he treats people well as long as they do the same to him. When we discussed marriage, we decided we didn't care much about the ceremony due to our budget, and we'd rather spend on a dream trip to Europe for our honeymoon. As for where to do it, since his family was spread out and mine was still mostly concentrated in my hometown, we decided to do it there. We weren't living too far off either, so we could take some long trips during the weekends to manage stuff. Plus, there was some work flexibility, so we could stay in my hometown for a bit too if needed. We sent out the engagement announcement and saved the date for a few months later. Well, at this point, my parents naturally demanded they meet my man. I wanted to grow a spine and refuse, but was having a hard time. The distance had made me think that my parents weren't so bad. Well, my husband looked like I'd cancelled Christmas when I told him I would at least ensure they were never alone with him. See, he had been getting ready for this. He even brought a high-quality recorder to hide in his pocket to record it all. He was stoked, thinking of all the ways he could refuse my sister's advances, insult her, and then spread the recording of her attempts to my family. Oh, I'm ready for this, come on, give it to me. So, off he went alone and excited to meet them, and later came back euphoric. Babe, you won't believe the awful stuff they wanted. Babe, we can screw them over so badly, there's so many possibilities. I was confused and wanted to hear the recording, but he, smartly, told me it was better to listen to him first or else I'd misunderstand him. Well, he went there, and instead of the flirting, my parents and my sister sat him down. After some grumbling about not being okay with him, my judgment, etc., they proclaimed they were willing to pay for my wedding on one condition. My sister would walk down the aisle on my wedding first in a wedding dress. Oh my god. Their excuses were that it wasn't okay for a younger sister to marry first, so it was only fair that I let my sister have at least the experience of it on my venue with pictures being taken and the dress, and she'd have a cake later too, etc. How the hell do you think that's gonna go down? Why do you think everyone will accept that and be okay with that? You've made this woman your golden child for so long and just blamed everything on your other child that you're so delusional you can't even conceive that you're insane. My husband sincerely recounted how my parents wanted even my wedding to be about my sister, with a grin on his face, and had the recording to prove it. I was shocked. The distance had softened how bad they treated me, and I thought even they wouldn't go so far. Thankfully, my husband insisted on the angle of revenge helped me not to get in a bad headspace. We had a blast thinking about ways to screw them over for this, from ridiculously outlandish to what we thought was feasible. When they called his much more level-headed brother, we decided on a plan. It involved having 2 venue addresses, giving them the wrong one, etc. Well, level-headed brother scolded us for it. While he acknowledged he would never be able to convince us from our retaliation, he at least showed us something like that would be hard to pull off. Some of our other ideas were also at danger of getting sued. So we eventually settled for the most benign plan. Act like we agreed, but then hire security and don't let her in. Love that. I love that. Just keep it nice and simple. You can have all these plans, nice and simple. Obviously, if that was all, it wouldn't be pro-revenge. The rest of all is mostly my husband, but he wants me to do the honours, so here it goes. Just important to mention, everything he did was previously discussed with me and were our mutual ideas. Okay. He went back to my parents, said he probed and thought I wouldn't be down with it. However, he didn't see the issue and, not wanting the family to fall apart, would be down to helping them do it. He pointed out I don't like conflict, so if I was surprised with it, I might not throw a tantrum in front of all the people. On the other hand, marriage is a big thing, so who would know if I'd lash out? Thus, he suggested a compromise. They'd help pay for stuff. This way, I would feel even more pressure to not say anything, as not only would we be public, well, with our families there, but I'd be grateful for the help they'd give, and that'll mollify me. He said my parents looked surprised, but my grown sister started skipping with joy, literally, like a kid. So, it was accepted. Important, my husband also claimed that due to some bad judgment in boyfriends in the past, these words were all my idea, so I'm proud of using their words against them. I was distrustful and controlling and liked to check his phone and stuff to ensure he wasn't cheating on me. As such, it was imperative that nothing of this plan was ever put in any writing. For any discussion pertaining to my sister walking down the aisle before me, he'd go over their house to talk. And so began the months of deception, where my parents and sister thought they were tricking me and my husband and I were milking them. How? Well, rather than pay for the wedding and lay low, of course, my parents wanted input in everything. Some stuff that meant a lot to me, the songs and the colour palette, my husband would convince them to let it go to keep me in line. But since we never really cared for the ceremony to begin with, everything else was game. Or so they thought. What we did was this. We'd go, say, to check the drinks and the menu options. We'd then accept the lowest or second lowest priced option. My husband would then, secretly, take my sister there to also try it out, then sigh and say it's a pity we don't want to abuse my parents' goodwill, so we won't get the best option. Cue my sister demanding my parents pay for the best. My parents would then tell me not to worry and they'd pay for the most expensive. Same was done with the photographer. Flowers. My husband handed my sister a bouquet of the flowers we wanted, then sadly expressed how I wanted some other tasteless flowers. Cue my parents telling me they wanted us to go with said flowers and they'd pay for it. Wedding dress. We hit a minor snag here. My parents wanted me to use a hideous dress. Okay, not outright hideous, but it wasn't my style and it wouldn't look good on me. We had planned on saying yes, then simply not using it, but my mum sent me a message about it, so there'd be proof I said okay. We had to go with me refusing in text and standing my ground. My husband went over there and said he'd see what he could do. My sister suggested ruining my desired dress so I'd be forced to wear the other one, and he pretended to agree. I mean, it is good, sweet revenge, but it's just so horrible reading that they're doing this, isn't it? Evil people, honestly. During all this time, they really did keep communications outside of any text. We made sure that had happened by, when my sister tried messaging my husband, have me reply to her. This solidified the uncontrolling and neurotic claims my husband was making, so they believed it and never risked anything in writing. Maybe some people might not like the thought of their partner going around and talking badly about them to family, but I'm such a doormat that the thought of being painting as this controlling and dangerous woman is extremely funny to me, and I egged him on to do it. I guess I have a warped sense of humour too. Oh, and my sister did try to flirt with him, but he acted conflicted. Also, to really sell that he was with them, my husband would pretend to tell them things without my knowledge. But he never told them we hired security. Well, we are going to call it half time there. I'm going to take a quick breather and we will come back to the rest of this story in tomorrow's video. I did initially read this as one of my 3 stories to do in the previous video, but it is so interesting, it is so long and incredible that I need to break it up into 2 parts, so stay tuned. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can see the follow-up that will come out tomorrow, and trust me, it is worth it. Oh boy, is it worth it. But thank you for watching, and I will see you again tomorrow.